Today is the table of worship. Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2 says, Therefore I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. So last Sunday morning, we put it out on the table. And then this Sunday morning, we got to look and see what's the second course. And the second course to the table of the Lord is the people of the Lord. And this morning you heard from some people encouraging you to worship, encouraging you to come before God, encourage you to experience Him. And so the therefore is there for a reason. Therefore, because God has prepared some things for you in life as a gift. And I know there have been some sour things in life, but also I hope there has been some juicy steaks of experiences and love in your life. And I hope you remember the juicy steaks of God's love and the juicy steaks of God's blessing and the juicy steaks of His word. And say, therefore, because of that, I'm going to present my body as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to Him. Hannah shared, she said in her upbringing in church, and I think that it's probably the same for many of us, that she said that it was like her Christianity was here and her emotions were here. And it wasn't the church's fault, it's people. It's just how it is. It's us. It's us. Because emotions open and available are always a life that's vulnerable. We shut down emotionally towards the Lord because we shut down. We do that. It's our default position. And we want to give, and we want to be open, we want to bring something from the inside and bring it out, but we can't because our doors aren't open to be vulnerable. Matthew 22. Verse 36 says they're talking to Jesus and they say, what's the greatest commandment in the law? And Jesus said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart. Yeah, you got it. But what blew me away in this passage was, I'm thinking about today and thinking about what's important and how you come to the Lord and how it has to be emotions on the surface and how emotions are good. They're given by God. Good emotions are given by God. When you break down and you hurt before God, those are good emotions before God. A person who's shut down is a person who can't follow Christ. The first thing he says, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart. With all your heart. A few weeks ago, God gave me a sermon illustration. And I'm going to point out somebody and I'm going to embarrass him and he can handle it. It's fine. He can handle it. It's fine. But I was, during worship, I had come up and I noticed that there was a couple back here in the back. It was John Sullivan was back there. You can handle it, John. It's okay. Everybody say, you can handle it, John. It's fine. It's fine. So, he was back here and I looked in a half second, for some reason, during that moment, John reached over and wanted to plant a big one on Jennifer's cheek. And Jennifer went, ooh. I knocked my microphone off. Jennifer just kind of went, oh, it's like it's out in public, John. It's people. It's like God's here, and so... You think it was Jennifer going for you? I don't think so, John. I don't think so. And instantly, I remembered a sermon. It's good to remember sermons. I have forgotten a lot of sermons. I've forgotten a lot of my sermons. And that's bad. But I remember a sermon given by a pastor here in town named Andy Merritt years ago, and he was preaching on worship, and he brought out this word, this Greek word, and the Greek word is proskuneo. Proskuneo. And pro is like, in front of or first, and kuneo is the word for kiss. It's to kiss toward. Pro is toward or to. It's to kiss toward. And that is one of the biblical words for worship. And you think about in the old days, somebody would come and they would come before a king, and they would come down and they would come, and one of the things they would do is they would come out and the king's hand would be outstretched. The idea of like kiss the hand or kiss the ring. Imagine coming and being so desperate before God and so happy to meet God. And so happy that like you want to be close to him, and you want to sense him, and he knows everything. He has everything you need, and he has everything you need, and you've been wanting to see him for so long in such desperation, and you come before God and you fall before him because you just can't handle it. It's just a big deal. And you find yourself at his feet, and all you can think to do is kiss his feet. When Hannah was born, our Hannah was born, was in the hospital in Fort Worth, Texas. And, it's a big deal. Like I'm in seminary, so like, I was wild. And it was funny in seminary. Like it's all biblical theology all the time. Like, everything you look at, your brain processes in which Bible verse it fits into. And so, so Hannah's being born, and, that was an experience, y'all. Oh, man. Graham being born, I knew a little bit what to expect. Hannah being born, that was an experience. It was big. Like I was messed up after that. Before God, I was messed up. I was like, oh God, life is real. Life is real. And so we gave her a name Hannah, and the word Hannah in Hebrew, it's an old Hebrew name. It's Chanach. That's the way you say it. And it means grace. It's the word for grace in Hebrew, for God's grace. And I had a little baby bracelet. I printed out the word Hannah, grace in Hebrew, and I printed it out off my computer, back then, through computer printing. And I had to go to the library to print it. We didn't have a printer, so and I went to the jeweler, this little jeweler, and they could etch things with their, and I had it etched onto a little baby bracelet. And so like we never felt the urge to like have the baby dedication ceremony, because in the hospital room we gave her her name. She received her name as an identity, Grace. And after that, I was really messed up after that. And so I had this, I just mentally, I got to get out of the room. I got to go and walk or something. I'm sure she wanted to do that too, but she couldn't. She had things to take care of. Yeah. Whew, ladies, you go through a lot. But, and so I went downstairs and I found a little chapel. It was a Harris Methodist hospital in Fort Worth, Texas. And I was messed up, y'all. I was like, oh, man. I don't know if I'm going to even get out of this hospital. I'm going to be liquid by the end of this. And there was a statue of Jesus. It's Methodist, so there's a statue of Jesus. It's white marble statue of Jesus. And then I really got undone and goofed up. Like, I'm so glad nobody came in that little chapel at that moment. Because before I knew it, I was down on my knees pouring the water in my hand onto the marble statue feet of Jesus, because there was some dirt and stains on his marble feet. And I know it's not Jesus. I know that's not Jesus. And I know that dirt didn't bother him or me. But after what I just received, after what just came into my life, After what I just saw, I couldn't stand before even this statue of Jesus. I couldn't even stand before the statue. Jesus, I was down on my knees, and all I could see was those, I can still see it now, the little carved toenails of Jesus in the sandal. And then I'm pouring the water, and I'm washing it off, and water's everywhere, and I don't know how they found that water later, but like, it was weird. I was weird. That's weird. That's strange. But until you've had some really strange experiences with God, you have not had many experiences with God. Proskuneo. All the way down. Like, I'm kissing his hand, I'm kissing his feet, I'm kissing something. Because my heart is not just open and vulnerable. My heart has already jumped out of my body and is outside of me. There's something that happens in worship, and not when you're trying to sing and not trying to worship, but when you lost all control. And in worship, losing all control is okay. It's okay. Because if you can't lose control in worship, okay, and you don't have to do it in front of people, it's okay, by yourself or in a small group. But if you can't lose control in worship, you've never surrendered control completely to him at all. Because it's the losing control. It's almost like in your life, the more you've surrendered in your life, the more you've given up and surrendered to him, the more like you just lose control in worship. And the more you are thinking it's okay to lose control in worship, the more then that bleeds over into everyday life. When you're at the grocery store or when you're doing your taxes. Or when somebody cheats you. Or when you feel used. Remember, like we talked about last Sunday? And so, in Luke chapter 7, is this passage, this story. I'm just going to read it. Verse 36, it says, and one of the Pharisees asked Jesus to have dinner with him, so Jesus went to his home and sat down to eat. When a certain immoral woman from the city heard he was eating there, she brought a beautiful alabaster jar filled with expensive perfume. Then she knelt behind him at his feet. So they didn't sit at tables like we sit at tables. They reclined at the table. It was like they had a chaise lounge, right up to the table. And they would lean back and they would kind of recline at the table. That's like a thing all the way around it. In the Middle East, they still do that today. And so Jesus' feet were back behind him. His head was near the table, leaning like this against some cushions near the table. And his feet were back behind. And so there's this woman, and she's back there at the feet of Jesus at the table. And it says she knelt behind him at his feet, weeping. Her tears fell on his feet. I don't think she planned to even come that day. Something happened. Somebody brought her there. And so the juxtaposition of her sin in the presence of a holy, pure, almighty God brought her down, not to her feet, but brought her to his feet. And then she notices that she's crying. Like, have you ever cried and you know you're about to cry, and sometimes you're crying and then you just happen to notice, like, oh my gosh, I'm crying. And like you didn't choose, your eyes just chose. And she sees her tears just falling on his feet. And she thinks, oh no. I'm crying on this Jesus' miracle worker, holy man, rabbi, that I have no idea why I feel this way about him's feet. I should wipe that off. and her hair is dangling. And your hair, I mean, Middle Eastern feet were dirty. Middle Eastern feet are still dirty. No Air Jordans, no hiking boots. It's the dirtiest part of the body. It's always dirty. And your hair is the thing that, your feet get dirty, but you don't get down and put your hair in the dirt, right? You don't get your hair dirty like that. It's the thing you least likely to get dirty when you're even doing a dirty job. And so she's there, and so she takes her best is so far beneath his worst that she says, like, my best, my righteousness, my immorality, whatever I've got going on is filthy rags. And so I'm just going to, I'd rather have that dirt on my hair than on his feet. And she's starting to wipe it off. And the Pharisee who invited them saw this. He said, if this man were a prophet, he would know what kind of woman this is and not let her get near him. The rules. The rules. We could talk about that for a while. He would know she's a sinner. I have a big soapbox that the thing that keeps people from salvation and from church and from knowing Jesus is that people who become Christians and grow in Christ all of a sudden look at other people's sin as if it's contagious and, ooh, it's going to get on me. Ooh, it's going to get on me. When it's already on you and you know it and you've just learned how to fake that it's not. And it leaves a lot of people without a witness and without Jesus. And so Jesus answered his thoughts. Now that's good too, right? His thoughts. Answered the Pharisees' thoughts. Simon, he said to the Pharisee, I got something to say to you. Go ahead, teacher, Simon replied. This is New Living Translation, so it's all conversational. And then Jesus told him a story. I'm going to answer your thoughts with a story. A man loaned money to two people, 500 pieces of silver to one and 50 pieces of silver to the other, but neither of them could repay him. And he kindly forgave both, canceling out their debts. Who do you suppose loved him more after that? Simon? Who do you love him more? And it's the one that, he says, the one who he forgave more. That's right, Simon. Tell you a little story, then go back to your life, Simon. Then he turned to the woman and said to Simon, look at this woman kneeling here. She would have made a lot of people in church feel uncomfortable that day. Don't you think? She made a lot of people wonder if they're coming back that day. It's a weird church. What is that woman doing to that preacher's hair, feet with her hair? You see this woman kneeling here? Simon? See, it's customary in the Middle Eastern society then, because they know you're coming in off the feet, and nobody wants your dirty feet anywhere near them. And you know that you're horizontal at the table. And so you don't have to turn much to be face to face with somebody's feet. And so it's customary to have a servant, or even if you're not rich enough to have a servant, that you or one of your family members or a child or somebody's going to offer them a basin of water and help them wash their feet as they come in off the dirty streets. Customary. If you didn't do it, you're either too stupid or too uncaring, or thought you were too good for it. Never be too good for the dirt of someone else's feet. Look at this woman kneeling here. When I entered your home, you didn't offer me water, to dust from my feet, but she's washed them with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You didn't give me a kiss. Customary in their society. Would be saying this. We'd say it this way. Like, where's my hug? Where's my hug? That's what we'd say. You didn't hug me. But from the first time I came in, she's not stopped kissing my feet. You neglected the courtesy of olive oil to anoint my head. You know, it's not like they wash their hair a lot, right? Olive oil, slick it back. But olive oil helped to keep their hair, in place and kind of could comb through some of the debris or whatever got in their hair throughout the day or throughout the traveling. But she's anointed my feet with rare perfume. You didn't give me oil for my head, but she gave the most expensive perfume she could find. And there's other stories that tell about how that, how she broke it. Most expensive perfume she could find and put it on her feet. Some people say that most expensive perfume, you would see it as something given to a young woman. It's family's lifetimes of savings as a way to hold some kind of investment so that she could have a dowry to get married. And obviously she wasn't going that route. She still had that. Other people have said that since she was an immoral woman, most likely this is the fruit of her immoral lifestyle, whether she prostituted herself or whether she just had these men who would just, over time just, gift her because of the relationship. And so she had that. It was a product of her immoral life. And she just wasted it on Jesus' feet. Wasted it, not wasted it, right? She worshiped him with the best she had and then sacrificed and surrendered her security for her future and trusted him with the thing that she was counting on to either help her get a man married or count on financially to take care of her because of how she earned it. And even saying this, I don't want any portion of that old life anymore. I don't want any portion of that old life anymore. I worship you, God, with divesting myself. Like somebody who sells off all their stock, they're divesting. With divesting myself of the assets of security that I have received through my way of doing things. That's why a person who's been wrecked by the love and salvation of Jesus, who cannot imagine that they've been invited to the table. You don't have to ask them 2 times to serve, and you don't have to ask them 2 times to tithe. You don't have to ask them 2 times to show up. And those of us who have trouble with those things, we got heart problems. We got issues. And I don't mean issues like, hey, you got issues. I mean issues like, come to Jesus with your issues. And so, in this verse 47, it says, I tell you, her sins, and they're many, have been forgiven. This passage helped me so much in my younger years. Like Hannah Hutchins, I was in church and I played drums in church and I worshiped God and I was active in those things at that young teenage age. And I never grew up a drummer and the people are going to see you. You play the cymbals in front of everybody and they're going to see you. And so you just kind of eventually lose all that stuff. And so in the church where everybody was saying I wish we could worship, I was my little self. I was like this. And I was down And people would say, I just wish, I probably need to go to a church where I can really worship God. And I thought, I would just say to my friends and they'd come to me and they'd say, man, I just want to go to church to worship God. And these people are all kind of, kind of stuffy and stuff like that. And I just remember saying to people, person after person after person after person, like, I know it's me and I'm weird, but if you want to feel free to worship, if you want to open your heart up and raise your hands, and if you want to dance before Jesus or you want to get down and kneel, then do it. Do it. Do it, because when you say that, you're not saying that you want to do it. You're saying that you want to feel the effect of other people doing it and not have to do it yourself and vicariously live off of someone else's worship. And experience somehow kind of the outward drippings of what they've got going on with Jesus and falsely live through someone else's relationship with God. That's what you're saying. I didn't say that to them. And another thing about that, what wrecked me over the years with this is this. It would bother me how the people I knew that were the greatest high character, great Christians, who helped people all the time and who came to church every Sunday and Wednesday and who often witnessed and who were the pillars of the church and the pillar of the community, were often the most stoic worshipers. They're often so stoic and so staid and so outwardly dry. And then the people who show up from time to time when they can figure out how to get to church and are screwed up lives and like they just can't even figure out how to live week to week. Those people come into church, fall on their face, and surrender to Jesus. You might not see them for another couple weeks, but then they come back again. And they fall on their face and they're trying and they stand back up and they try to walk a little bit and they fall back down. And they stand back up and they walk a little bit and they fall back down. And what bothered me is this, is that I preach and I believe that it's not the outward expression that is your true character. Like, I don't care how high you jump, I care how straight you walk when you come down. And so does your family. So, but worship is not worship until worship is shown. It's not. And so I would see these people, those two big differences in people. You know what I'm talking about? Like, it's weird. The freaky people who can't get it together worship huge. And the high character people who employ everybody and help everybody out and are kind of there. And this passage helped me a lot with that because I was praying over that one day and God gave me the image of your heart as like a well. And two things dig your well. One of them is how people have sinned against you. That digs your well. Abuse, abandonment, all the ways people can sin against you. That digs your well. Another thing that digs your well is your sins dig your well. And here's the thing. After that well gets dug, and the more sin against you and the more of your sin is in your past and in your memory and in your history, and we know just under the blood of Jesus Christ, but you still remember doing it, the more of that happens against you and that you do is the deepest your well goes. And here's the thing about the well. It has to be full of something. Of something. It has to be full of something. It's like a self-leveling, self-equalizing issue. It has to be full of something. And some people didn't dig that deep a well. People didn't dig the well against them, and they didn't dig their own well, and it's kind of a shallow well. It's full, but it's kind of shallow. They have to work harder to see they have to really try to see how badly they need Jesus. How much they too should probably also be crying on his feet and washing it with their hair. That's the position that they should also be in. They have to work harder to see that. But the people who have lived with that dug out well, they know that they finally have it cleared out, and they don't want all the things that used to fill up the well to come back in and fill it with trash and garbage. You know, a hole in the ground, people just throw stuff in a hole. If there's a hole in the ground, you go by the hole in the ground, you got some trash, you got some garbage, you put it in there. And finally, Jesus forgave them, and that stuff is cleared out. And they only want fresh, clear, pure water in it. That's all they want in it. They're also more susceptible to put up more trash back in there. That's why you don't see them sometimes. But when they get right again, here they come, hands lifted high. The well's got to be full, y'all. Your well has to be full. It has to be full. It'll be full of something. It'll be full of bitterness or betterness. It'll be full of tragedy or testimony. It'll be full of misery or the master. And because he said, she loves this way because she has been forgiven much. But a person who is forgiven little, loves little. There's the well. There's the well. About 2 years ago, I told this story already, but 2 years ago, me and Graham, I think we met an angel. We went down and we did our first camping trip without camping gear. We drove the car, threw a bunch of blankets and stuff in the little car, the HHR car, and Graham's. I better camp in the car while Graham's not full grown yet, so we can, both fit in there. And we went down and we stayed at the campground nearby where my family used to always go, by the lake in the area of the country we used to always go. And I thought, well, I'm just here. I'm just kind of trying to seek out something real here. And I didn't have a boat then. I had to buy fishing poles at the local little store nearby. And then so it was a campground. So I told him, I said, if anybody, I'll pay somebody to take us out on the lake so I can have those memories. I just got to get there. And so late that night, this man starts walking across the campground saying, because I had my card, I pulled the pastor card and my card to the campground office. And this man's walking across the campground at 10 o'clock at night. Pastor David Rathel. Pastor David Rathel. We found it, and he told us that he was responding to that request. His name was David King. Thinly veiled Lord. David like David and David King like King David. Thinly veiled Lord. Lord, you're trying to hide that really big, aren't you, Lord? And then we went out on his boat. There's a lot more to it. And he just started talking. about his life and all his experiences, things he had been through. And there's nothing like an old man out on a boat talking. Nothing like it in the world. You're both captive. And y'all, I didn't know how messed up I was until he started talking. I didn't know how my heart had been beaten up and my well had been dug deep and there was things in my well that shouldn't be in my well until he started talking. I mean, I knew, but I didn't know. No. And he just, this little bastard out there started crying. And he said, here's the lesson that I have finally learned at 60 whatever years old. Everything in my life, the good, the bad, the ugly, the tragedy, everything in my life has been for this one purpose. When finally I heard God say to me, just let me love you. Stop trying to offer me things. Stop trying to work for me. Stop trying to give things to me. Stop trying to feel your Christianity through helping people. Stop. Just stop. You can't do anything for me. Not really. You, with total vulnerability, unable to even respond and return anything. Let me love you. Let me love you. Let me love you. Let me love you. Just let me love you. Why did this happen in my life? Because I'm trying to get you to let me love you. Trying to get you to let me love you. Isaiah 6 verse 5 says, this is Isaiah, it's a point of worship. He sees the king high and lifted up. He says, on the year King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple, and the whole earth was full of his glory. And the incense of the temple went up, and I saw this vision. I was enraptured, and I was in the presence, in the throne room of God. And Isaiah says this, woe is me, for I am undone. For my eyes have seen the King. I'm a person of sin, and I live among a people of uncleanness. And I am undone because I have now seen perfection. And I can't offer anything. I can't do anything. Romans 12 says, present your bodies as a living, holy sacrifice. Present your body. All I have left is me. All I have left is me. And the table of worship is an altar. Altars are also tables, you guys. The table of worship is an altar. And when you realize you have nothing to do for God, then you realize all I can do is get up on the table myself. I am his banquet. I'm his banquet. Take me. Take me. Take me. A lot of times people get to the place in their life where they say, I'm done. You know. The person who on social media, the person who wants everybody's attention writes just, I'm done. Then they get, 500 comments and everybody, coming towards them. But that's a real feeling. Done. Just done. People have done the worst thing they've ever done in their life immediately after they say, I'm done. It's the breaking point kind of thing. where I've got to do something to get rid of this really garbage in my well, really is. Because all I'm getting is sewage come out of my well. I'm done. And so the only thing that'll keep you from sometime in your life being, I'm done with church. People say that. I'm done with people. Right? And sometimes you get to the point, I'm done with God. You'll either be undone in worship, or you'll get to the place where you're just done. You're done. In every area in your life you feel like I'm done is an area that you need to be undone. Wherever you say I'm done, the answer to being done is to be undone. Woe is me, I'm undone. I'm undone. I'm wrecked by this. Just let me love you. Just let me love you.